Alright, hi everyone, welcome to the first episode really of Antichrist Analysed, and today the verse we're going to look at is, or the section of verses is Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27. Verse 27 in particular has to be one of the mother texts that promotes this idea of the Antichrist. In particular, the area I want to focus in on today is this idea that he will well, first of all, we see that he is in the midst of the 7 years of tribulation, and then 3.5 years in, the rebuilt temple would have already been set up, and that he will walk into the temple at that point, put an end to the sacrifices, and basically tell people that he is God. Let me begin by reading verse 27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end is decreed, is poured out on him. Now, a lot of people like Hal Lindsey, Skip Heitzig, Thomas Ice, Paul Benoit, they all believe in this interpretation of this text, that it is referring to the Antichrist. Now, you may remember I used this text very heavily in the tribulation videos, looking at the 7 years of tribulation theories, and really we can't separate the two, the tribulation and the Antichrist, because this text is used to promote both things. So if you remember, within Bible prophecy, a day refers to a year, the day for a year principle. Now, in Ezra chapter 7, you can read about the decree that is mentioned here. It says that in verse 24, 77s are decreed for your people. And then in verse 25, know and understand this: from the time the word goes out to restore and build Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes. We know that the decree began in 457 BC. That is when this prophecy begins. And you see, this is where in the text, when you get that verse, don't call what I've called good evil, and this is what people do with this text. The text here is talking about the anointed one when the ruler comes. Well, who is the anointed one? That is Jesus Christ, the Messiah. He was anointed at his baptism in 27 AD, and so the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks takes us all the way down to 27 AD. So when we look at the context, we are dealing with the Messiah, Jesus Christ, not the Antichrist. Well then, after Jesus Christ is baptized, we have one more period of 7 days. We have one more week. And of course, if you add 7 years to AD 27, that is going to take us to AD 34. And that takes us right through into the life of Jesus. And look what it says at verse 26. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. So that's talking about the crucifixion and the sacrifice of Christ. You see, and then that takes us right into the heart of verse 27. It says that he will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7, and then in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And what does that mean? It means that when Jesus Christ was crucified, he was ultimately the final sacrifices, and that he is now the direct link for us to get to God, to have a relationship with God. And that's why the curtain of in the temple was torn in two when Jesus was crucified. There was no more need to sacrifice lambs in the temple because the Lamb of God was slain. There was no more need to go through the ritualistic sacrifices that the Jews had to do to atone for their sins for a certain period of time and then have to do them all again. This is a final end to sacrifice and offering. The covenant that he established is the new covenant in his blood when the apostles shared communion with him. He put an end to the sacrifices and the offering. Now, that is all to do with Jesus Christ. The question is, do you see the Antichrist here in this passage? But of course, the interesting verse is at the end of 27, and at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. In other words, a lot of people think that this Antichrist person is going to come and that he is going to be the abomination, because he is going to walk into this holy place, this rebuilt temple, and set up an image of himself. Where what Jesus is saying here, or what Daniel is saying about Jesus, is that that religious system now, that temple, was the abomination, and because of that apostate, it caused desolation. And really, the desolation came physically and manifested through the Romans in 70 AD, but really the abomination that caused the desolation, I think, was the rejection of the Messiah from the Jewish leaders. They should have known better. They should have listened to Jesus. So, as you go through it, this point by point, I cannot see the Antichrist in this verse. The entire context of this passage is about Jesus Christ, the Messiah, his coming into the world, being anointed, and the world rejecting him, and him establishing the new covenant in his blood for many. It has nothing to do with the Antichrist establishing a peace treaty or a covenant with the Jews. Now, the last point to mention, of course, is this idea of a 7 year of tribulation. What people do is that they stop the clock after the 62 weeks. But when you read about this in context of Jesus Christ, there is no reason for that clock to stop. The entire thing is 490 years, all the way from 457 BC right up to the time of Jesus Christ to 34 AD. So that right there is the mother text used to promote the Antichrist, and as we can see, the foundations of it is very shaky. So in the next videos now, I want to talk about this abomination where supposedly the Antichrist is going to walk into a temple and call himself God. And for the next video, we'll look at the Olivet Discourse section.